Okay, great stuff. Right then, everybody, welcome to our Ironman UK in collaboration with Team Oxygenaddict webinar on tapering and the art of getting ready for race day and making sure we take care of all the things that we can possibly take care of. My name is Coach Rob Wilby. I'm also joined tonight by our other coach, Andy Heaps. He's here as well. How are you tonight, Andy?
Evening, everyone. Yeah, very good. Thank you, Rob. Nice to see lots of excited, nervous looking people ahead of race day.
Most people with their screens turned off because they're so nervous, and that's fine. And honestly, if you want to come on and have a chat face to face, you probably feel much more relaxed about it afterwards. But let's jump right into this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you what the final 2 weeks of our training plan looks like if we're going to give a training plan to an athlete. So let's have a look here. Yeah, here we go. Great stuff. So that's sharing over here. Awesome. So we are currently Thursday, the week
it's
before the race.
Rob.
Disappeared. Oh.
Yeah, it was there, and now I've just got a blank. Yeah.
Is that's
your Zoom screen?
Hang on a second.
Yeah, there we go.
Gremlins. There we go. Happy days. It's on my other screen. All right, good. So first thing to talk through, the main aim of your taper is so you get to race day feeling fresh. And what I mean by fresh is separate to fitness and separate to tired. Freshness is this elusive quality that we all want to feel on race day. We all want to be very, very fit. And to do that, we've got to train a lot. But we also can't be really tired on race day. So we also have to rest and recover from the training that we have done. And I'm sure you've all done a ton of training in the build up to this. So our job is to reassure you that if you take some rest days, if you gradually reduce the amount of trainings that you're doing over the next 2 weeks, you will still be really fit on race day, but what you'll manage to do is shed some of that fatigue. So the balance here is between resting up enough that you get fresh and that you shed that fatigue, and still doing enough movement and training so that your body doesn't feel really stale and rubbish come race day, which if you just rested and did nothing for 2 weeks or did nothing for a week, obviously you'd expect to feel pretty awful come race day. So rough guidelines here. In this week, 2 weeks out from race day, we advise cutting your sessions back to between 30 and 45 minutes a day. We allow you to have a longer bike ride at the weekend, but we say limit that to 90 minutes. Limit your longest run this week to about 45 minutes. And as long as you're doing one session a day, it doesn't really matter what that is. And you can see the structure we've got there. But as long as you're doing something every day, your body is going to keep in training mode, but it's going to shed that fatigue. And by race day, you'll feel really good. But here's the caveat. During the next sort of 5 to 7 days, you have to expect to feel not great. Taper madness, in inverted commas, is a very real situation where our bodies don't feel great because we've halved, or in next week's case, quartered the amount of training that we're doing. We're not releasing those feel-good hormones. Our body's kind of wondering what's going on because the training volume's been cut in half and then cut in half again. So you're going to feel pretty weird. But honestly, look at that structure on the screen. We've refined this over 10 years worth of training. It does the job of balancing, keeping you moving enough and having you feel really fresh and really good to go on race day. But you probably won't start feeling good until Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So I appreciate there's a lot of trust involved in it. With the athletes we coach, it's okay. I've got hundreds of athletes saying to the other ones, look, it's okay. Trust the process. You're going to feel good. You just have to go through it and experience it. And even athletes who've done it before need reminding that they're going to feel pretty rotten for a week. It's natural, but you have to freshen up in order to get to race day. So that's this week, 30 to 45 minutes a day, longest run 45 minutes, longest ride 90 minutes, maybe a short run off the bike. Limit yourself to 10 minutes or so, or maybe 15 minutes, because it's not about building fitness at this point anymore. It's just about keeping your body moving. Next week, we're going to reduce the amount of training you do again. So we're going to look at sessions that are between 20 and 30 minutes long. You can do some pickups in there, especially in the pool, but I'd limit yourself in terms of intensity to the kind of intensity that you're going to do on race day, which for Ironman isn't very fast. So it's okay to go out and ride or run at the kind of pace that you realistically hope to achieve on race day. But what we don't want you doing is doing high intensity stuff. This is not a taper and peak for an Olympic. You don't want to be doing 1 minute really hard efforts, VO2 max efforts. You just want to be limiting yourself to the kind of intensity that you're going to ride and run on race day. In the pool, I think you can throw a few shorter efforts of 25 meters in. That's just really good at waking your body and waking your arms up. But the pool's a different beast. In general, if you can keep your workouts to 20 to 30 minutes long next week, fantastic. Plan to take a total rest day on the Friday of the week, and then plan to do a little bit of exercise on the Saturday. So for most of you, you'll be racking on the Saturday. So a really good thing to do there is to do that short run that we've put in there. Do that very first thing in the morning before you go off and rack, and then go back to your hotel, put your feet up and relax for the rest of the day. A 20-minute run with, you're probably seeing the structure of that session. We allow the athletes to do 3 or 4 sort of accelerations of 100 meters, just a little bit faster than you'll build up to on race day. It's just going to wake your legs up and make you feel good. But again, the idea is not to get tired. It's not to get hot and sweaty. It's just to let off a little bit of that pent-up anxiety that you built up during the week. So do that first thing Saturday, then rack your bike, and then get yourself home to your hotel and put your feet up and rest and recover. Is there anything you want to add to that at this point, Andy?
Probably just to reiterate the more general point, which is the fitness you're going to have on race day, you already have now. There's no more fitness to be gained between, in the next 10 days or so, 9 days, whatever it is. The purpose of the training that you do between now and then is primarily to kind of hush that little chimp on your shoulder that's telling you you've not done enough. You need to cram as much in as you can between now and race day. It's simply not the case. You're not going to, regardless of what you've done or not done up until this point, you're not going to gain any more fitness. So it's about maintaining the fitness that you've got and getting yourself to the start line in as good a physical and mental shape as you can possibly be.
Yeah, brilliant. You said that really well, mate, I think. And it's really easy for us to sit here and say this. We recognize this because our brains are telling us, look, there's still 2 weeks. I can still get fitter in this time. Your hard work is done at this point. The last thing you want to do is to be really fit and really tired on race day and know you've got a good performance in you, but just feel too tired to get it out. It's really, really frustrating for athletes. So accept that the hard work is done now. What you've got to try and do is freshen your body up and get there on race day. Now, you're going to need extra things to do over the next week or so. So while you're not training, you're going to have to put your minds to work. There's lots of things you can concentrate on. So preparing how you're going to race is a really good thing to do. Preparing your equipment to make sure it's ready to go is a really good thing to do. And if you're really at a loss and a short end of what to do, get yourself an old wheel and practice changing a tire on it in case you get a puncture. You can sit and do that while you're watching the telly, as long as it's a clean wheel and you're not going to get told off by the other half. Give yourself something to practice because everyone is going to puncture on race day at some point. And I really hope it's not you, but 5 or 10
not in Bolton.
5 or 10 attempts at changing a tire can take your time it takes to do this from, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes the first time you try. We had an athlete riding with us the other week and he had a tire changed within, wheel off, tire changed, new tube in, back on within 2 minutes. And it wasn't a drama. He was just really well practiced and knew exactly what he was doing and where his spares were. So that's a really good thing to have you practice during this time coming up. Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen at this point. A couple of other things to mention for you before we go into the Q&A. We're going to share with everyone who's on here, everyone who's registered and everyone who's sent their email to us, our race preparation document. That's really long and detailed, and it's mainly aimed at the athletes we coach, but you guys are going to get a ton of stuff from this. It's every single thing we could think of that you need to consider before race day. It's about 11 sheets of A4 long. And if all you do is skim it and address some of the points that you know are your particular weaknesses, great. You don't need to stress about all the tiny weeny details. But for those of you who are really involved in this, everything that's on that list is there for a reason. So one of the really, or two of the really common things we get asked are about pacing on the bike and run, and about nutrition, hydration, and electrolytes. So we're just going to talk you through that really quickly before we go into the Q&A. Pacing on the bike is the number one thing that is going to determine whether you have any kind of run at all or whether you have a long, painful walk. And for most people, I feel confident saying this, having been at the Ironman UK race site for the last, I think, 9 years, most people go out on the bike too hard and then fade, and then the marathon is negatively affected by it. So if you have a power meter, if you have a heart rate monitor, and you use either or both of those, use this week to make sure you know what your realistic numbers are and stick to them. You're going to feel amazing coming out of the water. You're going to be rested. You're going to be as fit as you've ever been. And it's really tempting to think that the way you feel represents a massive jump in fitness, and what used to be, 200 watts used to feel hard in training, and today it feels really easy. So maybe I'll ride at 250 watts. Don't get drawn into that. Have a plan for what your power or heart rate numbers are and stick to them. It's really common people go too hard because they're feeling great. And that's it. We want it feeling great, but the first 2 hours of your ride should feel really easy. They should feel really easy. You shouldn't feel like you're in a time trial. You shouldn't feel as though you're pushing at any point. And that's what's going to give you the ability to have any kind of run off the bike, let alone the kind of run that you're capable of. So let's put some rough numbers on this. If you're a heart rate person, you want to be in lower zone 2 in the first half of your ride, and then drifting into upper zone 2 in the second half of your ride. If you're a power person, you want to be somewhere between, on Bolton course, probably somewhere between 60 and 70% of FTP as an average, accepting that it's very hilly and there are going to be times when you are going to have to spike your power and heart rate just to get up these hills. So there's some rough guidelines. Faster athletes, closer to that 70% of FTP end. Slower athletes, closer to the 60% of FTP end. Our advice for pacing on the hills is going to be, go up these hills as slowly as you can, conserving effort and conserving energy on the really, really steep ones. On the shallow hills that you can ride essentially as if they're flat, you can control your effort and power, just stick to your power and heart rate numbers. But on the really steep ones, you want to be trying to conserve as much energy as you can do. And certainly don't get into your head the picture of a Tour de France rider that's racing somebody else up a climb. You really want to be conserving that effort for the run later on, because there's some savagely steep repeating hills on the Bolton course. That's what's really going to sap your legs. Okay, we'll come and talk to the detail and the nuance of this a little bit more later on. And in our race preparation document, there's reference to a computer package you can use called Best Bike Split, which for those of you who are really into this, really into bikes and are using a power meter, Best Bike Split lets you set up a free account and can help you predict how long it will take you to take on the bike course and predict some power numbers for you. It's remarkably accurate. And like I said, it's free as well. So it's well worth having a look into that. Now, moving on to the run, in terms of pacing on the run, we use something called Jack Daniels Pace Calculator. You can just go away and Google that, or there's a link to it on oxygenaddict.com. What this does is you enter the time you've done in a recent race, a 5K, 10K, half marathon, and it predicts a bunch of run paces for you. We recommend you sticking to what Jack Daniels describes as e-pace, easy pace or endurance pace. It's going to look on paper like it isn't that fast. That's what the vast majority of you are going to think when you see it. But our experience has been that it'll give you a range of about 30 seconds a kilometer here. So I would say it would be like from 6 minutes to 6 minutes 30 kilometer. The faster end of e-pace is a best case scenario for a very fit, well-trained athlete who executes their bike fitness really well on the day as well. So use that as a guide to what your best case scenario is. And if it tells you the best case scenario is 6 minute Ks, you better have a really good reason for going faster than 6 minute Ks coming out of transition 2, because what's going to happen is it's just going to come back at the end of the day and it's going to be really challenging for you and you're going to end up walking a lot. So there's some really rough pace guidelines there for you. most of you will know this already, I think, at this point. Most of you will have realized that the paces that you've done in training are going to be what you turn out on race day. And it's going to be pretty unlikely that there's a massive fitness jump at this point and you have an amazing leap in performance. You're gonna race to the level of your training, not the other way around, essentially. So if anyone's got questions around that, we're happy to answer them. But it's a long day. It's a game of patience is going to play out. And those of you who stick to your pacing in the first 2 hours of the bike have got the best chance of sticking to your pacing in the last hour of the run. Is there anything you want to add there, Andy?
Probably just worth adding on the run. Those of you who've listened to us chat about training and racing strategies before will have heard us talk about the run walk strategy for long runs and running on race day off the bike. In Bolton, a really good way to think about this, to keep it simple and not overcomplicate it, is walk the aid stations. So walk through the aid stations, take the time you need to get the gels, the fluid, whatever nutrition and hydration on board, rather than trying to run through, drink a cup of flat Coke while you're trying to run and end up pouring it all over your face, because, at best, that is deeply unpleasant that long into a day. You do not want the stickiness of sports drink or flat Coke all over your face. But it's two birds with one stone. It gives you the micro recovery of a walk every, I can't remember, it's a mile or a mile and a half or so, I think, in Bolton, each aid station. And it allows you to get what you need on board without you sort of jiggling about like you would be if you were trying to do it when you were running. So as tempting as it is to power through as fast as you can and kind of just grab everything and just shove it in your face and then get going again, use it as an opportunity to slow down, take stock, walk, take the time you need to get what you need on board, and then get going again when you're at the other side.
Yeah, I was having a nosy earlier on. The aid stations at Bolton this year are going to be every 1.5 kilometers. So that's really great timing for the majority of people. That means it's going to be about 10 minutes when you're out there. It really will help conserve the back end of your marathon if you get that walk break in. And that brings us nicely on to talk about calories, electrolytes, and fluid, doesn't it, at this point as well? So the really common question is, and I've been having a lurk in some of the Facebook forums, the person who's telling you that pork pies and sausage rolls are a good fuel to have on race day is trolling you all, right? Don't believe that. That's not what you want to be taking on race day. So we primarily want to be concentrating on the amount of carbs that we're taking in and the kind of carbs that you would have in a training ride. And they're going to be split between either liquid calories in your drinks bottle, gels, some of those you could put in your drinks bottle as well, and solid foods as well. Now, don't try anything new on race day. So the things that have been working for you in training, great. I think the range of nutrition on the IRONMAN UK course, the stuff they give out is called 226 bars. So if you haven't tried those before, it's an idea to get them and try them in the next 10 days. Because if they've got stuff out there that works for you, fantastic. But if you haven't used it before, don't try something new on race day unless you're absolutely desperate. In fact, I saw today the Morton advert in the IRONMAN UK race pack actually says on it, don't try this on race day, with an asterisk. And it's their whole marketing thing. It says, we've got a fantastic gel, but if you haven't trained with it, don't use it on race day, which I think is amazing. Well, it's really solid advice from them. The last thing you want to be doing is something new come race day. Okay, so the mix of liquid calories, so some kind of sports drink mixed in your water, some kind of gels, and some kind of solids. A real rough guide for you here is you need to be looking to be taking in 1 gram of carbohydrate per gram of body weight per hour when you're out there on the bike. I don't think it matters the mix of those 3 that I mentioned, but swapping them up can be really good in terms of boredom and in terms of helping your stomach digest it. I'd put a limit on that. If you're a person who is above about 85 kilos, about 85 grams an hour is about the maximum that we've seen anyone outside of really high performing pros successfully digest. And that's the key here, right? Yes, you can smash down 120 grams an hour, but if 50 grams of it is sitting in your stomach undigested, when you start running, that can lead to you either being sick or having to go to the toilet and having a very unpleasant time out there. So 1 gram per kilo of body weight is a real good sort of starting point. So it means like an 80 kilo guy is going to be having 80 grams of carbs, which is about 320 calories, give or take, to come from carbs, which I feel is about right. That seems to be the number. If you're 60 kilos, you're going to be 60 grams. That's about 250 calories an hour. So those numbers feel about right to me. And as much of the stuff, you can go and get it on the Ironman UK website now. The race document is there, downloadable. As much of the stuff that they're going to be putting out for free that you know you can take and stomach, fantastic. That means you have to carry less. If, however, whatever kind of gel they have or bar they have doesn't work for you, you really don't want to be having to take it on race day. So my advice to you would be make another plan. So that's either carrying the solids in the pockets in your jersey or your bike, or in your tri-suit, or even one of the things we've used before is mixing up a whole bunch of gels into a water bottle. You can actually get up to about 12 gels in a water bottle with some of the brands that are out there, the watery ones. Mix a bit of water in, and so you've got a really concentrated bottle of energy on your bike. Some people do that, so they've got tons of calories in there. Some people put 300 or 400 calories into a bottle and mix it with water. Whatever works for you, whatever seems to make sense when you do your race planning document, that's great. But the key here is have a plan, know your numbers to start with about how much you're going to need, and then stick to that plan. And if you realize you're at the 4 hour, the 5 hour point of the bike ride, and you've got tons of stuff left in your pockets, but you don't feel like eating, my tip to you here is you're going to probably need to slow down, because if we work a bit too hard, the body shuts off that blood supply to the stomach and you find it hard to digest stuff. So often the intensity of the exercise is the thing that's the challenge when we're trying to digest calories. And unfortunately, Ironman is an energy limited event before it is a fitness limited event, meaning that if you don't absorb those calories, you're not going to have them for the marathon. Okay, so pacing on the bike is critical, both in terms of being able to run, but also in terms of being able to digest. Water and electrolyte guidelines. The standard sort of finger in the air advice here is 1 bottle of 750 milliliters per hour and more if it's really hot or you're really thirsty. And in that bottle, we recommend having electrolytes mixed to the strength that is right to you. Now, Ironman provide Gatorade out on the course. That's got about 500 milligrams of sodium per liter in the mix. For some really heavy sweaters, you're going to be needing up to 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium per liter to replace it. I'm at the very salty end and I need like 1,900 milligrams a liter. So just having whatever's on the course wouldn't do it for me. I have to have extra electrolytes mixed in there. There's tons of different companies out there that provide them. But again, you've got 10 days to order some and get ready. There's plenty of manufacturers make salt tabs. And in fact, we're going to put out on the podcast, we're going to put next week's podcast out early tomorrow. And it's going to be a special all about calories, hydration, and electrolytes. It's one of the old episodes I've got saved in the can from a couple of years back. So have a listen to that. There's some really good guidelines in there that'll give you some really good, like how do I carry all this stuff? How much do I need? Is there a way I can find out what kind of sweater I am? It'll answer that kind of question for you. But with it being forecast to be so hot, it's really worth bearing in mind. You're going to need, it's obvious it sounds like, you are going to need more fluid on race day if it's really hot than if it hasn't been hot in training. And that's the case for most of us in the UK. It's not been very hot until a couple of weeks ago. And I'm saying this to underline the importance of, you might have gone out and done a 4 hour ride and just taken maybe 1 bottle with you or 2 bottles with you at some point. It's not going to cut it when it's 26, 28, 30 degrees. So be mindful. There's 3 aid stations per lap on the bike. That's 9 opportunities to pick water up. You're absolutely sorted for fluid. There's no problem there. But have an idea of how much you're going to need and have a way to keep track of you know, how much you've drunk per lap, so you know where you're up to. Okay. So that's all the main points I think that I wanted to cover, Andy. Is there anything else you can think of that we had on our list that we wanted to go through? I'm conscious I've talked for 20 odd minutes there.
Probably just also reiterate the fact that if it is, well, first of all, in terms of hydration and nutrition, hopefully you're relatively on top of this from your long training rides in terms of knowing what you can stomach, what works for you, how logistically to carry and take the quantities of the stuff you need on the day. The second point on that is, it's all well and good having a plan, but you need to actually stick to the plan. And sometimes the kind of excitement and adrenaline of race day can scupper the best laid plans. So a really simple trick that's worked for me in the past is just set an alarm on your Garmin watch or bike computer to go off every 10 or 20 minutes, which is basically your reminder to take a gel or a bite of a bar or a sip of your electrolytes, or whatever your strategy is, but just something that acts as that reminder of, oh yeah, I need to eat and drink. Because if you find yourself eating and drinking to thirst or hunger, i.e. only eating and drinking when you feel like it, that's a surefire way to get yourself into trouble later in the day. And the other reason that the kind of that little and often idea is important is because if it is hotter than you're used to on race day, a lot of people find it more difficult to absorb calories when it's hot, because it's just an extra stress on the body and on the digestive system. So what you don't want to be doing is kind of gulping down 90 grams worth of carbs in one go because you suddenly realize you haven't taken anything for an hour. So the more you can do to stay in control of what you're taking and when you're taking it, the better chance you've got to react and adapt to any issues that you might have on the day in terms of how you feel and any GI distress that you might feel like is coming on. But yeah, hopefully you've all got a semi-decent plan from your long training runs and rides.
So we'll open this up at this point for any questions that you have. If you just want to drop a note into the chat box and say I've got a question, or if you want to stick the hands up sign there, and we'll have a chat with you guys face to face. I think while we're waiting for people to do that and to come up with the questions, something to really bear in mind when it's really hot is, as long as you are confident you're within the cutoff, success on race day is getting to the finish line. And for lots of you on here right now, success feels like a number. It feels like I've got to be, you know, pick a number. I've got to be sub 10, sub 12, sub 14, sub 16. My bike split's got to be under 7 hours. Whatever number our brain has said to us, the plan is going to have to be flexible if it's going to be 28 degrees on race day. You have to accept that your body is going to send some of your blood supply to the skin to shed the heat. And that means there's going to be less available for absorption in the stomach. That means we're going to be able to absorb less calories. That means we're going to have to slow down. So if you feel yourself starting to wilt at the halfway point of the bike, or you feel bloated or full, it's almost always solved by slowing down for a bit. Doesn't mean your day's over at hour 4 of the day. So I'm going to encourage you all to have a really flexible mindset to this, because it's really easy when we're hot and uncomfortable and tired and we've put a load of effort into this to go, do you know what? 10 hours is out the window. I'm done with the sport. I'll sell my bike at the end of the day. I don't care anymore. When actually slowing down, you know, taking stock, really settling for 30 minutes, things can feel really, really different again, and you can feel great again. You'll probably go through 2 or 3 or 4 really big ups and downs during the course of the day. So expect them and be ready for them when they come. This isn't meant to be easy, because everyone would do it if it was easy. You're going to find out about yourselves as you do this. And it's easy to think you know yourself sitting here warming up in a nice comfortable chair before Ironman. There's a great Chris McCormack quote where he said he thought he knew what Ironman Hawaii was going to be like because he'd watched the video so many times with the air conditioning on. And it turns out the exact point on Harvey where he remembered watching and planning to make his move to win the World Championships was the exact point he started walking, because there was no air conditioning and there was nobody turning music on and there was nobody inspiring and cheering him along. That's going to happen to you at some point, very likely on race day. You're really going to feel flat and you're really going to want to quit. So make a plan now for what you're going to do when you feel like that. Write something down. Even if the plan is, I'm just going to slow down if I'm on the bike for a bit. I'm going to walk for 5 minutes and then I'm going to feel better. You can always quit later on, but once you've had that little paddy and got off your bike and sat down, we want you to keep moving as much as you can, even if you're not moving very quickly, because things can and will feel very different 30 minutes later. Okay. Right. So questions and answers. I'm sure loads of you have got things that you would like to ask at this point. If you can, keep them focused on race day stuff, performance stuff, rather than, obviously we don't work for Ironman, so I can't answer questions about, you know, where the transition set up or where you park your car or what time the buses are or things like that, unfortunately. I know that they're doing a separate thing on Instagram where you'll get all those answers anyway, but stuff specific to your racing, brilliant, bring those on. Andy and I are very hopefully, we're just waiting for confirmation from the Ironman team, going to be doing some transition walkthroughs on Saturday. We've got 3 of those planned at different times. We're just waiting for the team there to confirm them. So if you guys are around at Racking, what we'll be doing is basically taking you guys from the water, walking you up to the tent, walking you into transition. Even if you can't find us or we're not around at the time, that's a really valuable thing for you to do for yourselves on race day as well. See if you're allowed to walk out of T1 down to the water's edge, have a look there, walk back up the walkway. It's probably about 150 meters between the water's edge and the transition 1 area. Get a plan for what it looks like. Walk to where your bike is racked and find some kind of marker for which row your bike is in. There's always different advertising flags and banners and things up. So this might sound obvious now, but the number of people that you see who run up the wrong row on race day morning because they've got excited and can't find a way back to their own bike. To take a little bit of time when you've wrecked your bike, go back to the entrance of T1 and walk back to your bike, and then walk out from your bike to where you'll go. Then you'll know exactly where you're going come race day morning. Like I said, we're going to be there and we're going to be taking people through this. So please come over and meet us for that. The details of that will be getting emailed out this week, won't they, Andy?
Yeah. While we wait for any questions to come through, a couple of quick things that I would add, especially given the possibility of a hot day, is generally make sure you've got a plan B. So that may well be a plan B for heat and managing the heat while you're on the bike. It may well be a plan B for, you know, mechanicals and stuff like that. We always like to talk about and encourage people to have special needs bags. So I think, is it once on the bike or twice? I can't remember whether it's once or twice on the bike that you'll be able to go past the special needs.
I think they pass it 3 times and they can access it every time. Yeah, and It's the same on the run, I believe.
So the thing to bear in mind with the special needs bags are, only put stuff in it that you're happy to be thrown away at the end of the day if you don't use it. So don't put anything valuable in it. But knowing what we know about the Bolton course in terms of, let's say, road quality, it's entirely feasible that you might lose a bottle along the way, or some of your nutrition might bounce out of your pocket or off your bike. So having a backup in your special needs bags is really, really useful, because it removes that need, that necessity, should something happen, for you to have to rely on the aid stations. And we always hammer home to our athletes, control the controllables. So there will be things on the day that you can't control. Weather is a good one. But there's a lot that you can control. And we've seen it so many times where people come unstuck on the day by things that they can and should have controlled, but haven't kind of thought of or haven't made provisions for in the first place. So that is a really quick win. And hopefully you won't need to use the special needs and it'll all get chucked, and you know, you'll be happy that that's all being chucked without you having to use it. But it's peace of mind if nothing else. So it's well worth taking a bit of time to think about what you're going to put in there and the circumstances around which you would need to call upon it.
It's also worth, I think, adding that stick a spare tube and a spare CO2 in your special needs bag and hope that you don't need it, and carry 2 with you on your bike, but have that extra spare one in your special needs bag. That saved my race Ironman UK one year when I had a flat and I could only carry 1 spare because I was running tubs at the time. So it was a really nervous 20 kilometers to the special needs bag to get my spare tub. I'd advise everyone to have an extra spare inner tube and an extra spare CO2. It's only going to cost you £5 if you never get it back at the end of the day, but it might well save your race. We've had a couple of questions come through here. I think let's kick off. I'm going to ask Jordan McDonald. Jordan, do you want to come on and have a little chat with us about your experience with the jellyfish? If you just, I'll send you an invite here to unmute yourself and we can have a little chat. You there, Jordan? Can you hear us? Yeah, I'm not having success with getting Jordan on. Oh, there we go. You there? Hello.
There we go. Hello.
So tell us about your question then.
So I did a shorter sprint event at the Swansea site the other day, and it's the same swim area for the Ironman 70.3. And I was caught up by the jellyfish there. So I think is there a way of getting around that sort of on race day, knowing they'll be there?
It's a really tough one. I mean, the first thing we have to hope is that they won't be there on race day, because they're not always in the same place, remember? Yeah. So let's hope they've moved on. That's the first thing. Did you feel like you got badly stung by them, or was it just the kind of the freak out factor of them bouncing off your hands and head as you went through?
The latter. I think if I knew they weren't there and I didn't have my head in the water, it wouldn't matter so much. But sort of seeing them there is a quick, had to sort of readjust, take a few breaststroke lengths and then carry on.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you've done exactly the right thing there, Jordan, to be honest, because it's a really big challenge when the jellyfish come into any kind of body of water. Obviously, our athletes who are doing Bolton are not going to face this, hopefully. I don't think there are any jellyfish in Pennington Flash. There certainly shouldn't be. But firstly, I think just having been through it and knowing that you were okay and it wasn't too bad is one of the things that you're going to have to hold on to then. We'll just have to hope that they're not there for race day, I'm afraid.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, fingers crossed, eh? Now, next question we've had here is from Mohammed Amrani. Mohammed, do you want to come on and we'll have a chat? Because I think your question's a really good one, actually, for athletes who are considering swim pace and thinking about what to do.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. You?
Really good, thank you.
Yeah, so my question basically, what kind of pace should we expect for the swim? I've been reading a few things about like it should be really steady to slow. But I've done a couple of half Ironman. It was not really that slow. I mean, you could go still a bit hard and still go up the water, feeling fresh. So what do you think?
Firstly, I think the swim pacing advice is different for different kinds of athletes. Were you an athlete who swam as a kid? Are you a sort of decent front pack swimmer?
Well, no, I mean, my half Ironman swim was around 31 minutes. I'm expecting to do like 104 maybe. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable expectation. If you've swum like a 31, I think somewhere in the region of 64, 65 is a reasonable expectation. You asked relative to CSS pace, and what we tend to see is that it's like CSS plus 4 seconds 100 for half Ironman and CSS plus 8 seconds 100 for Ironman. Okay. So it is a little bit slower, but what we also find is that people who are decent swimmers like you can push themselves. I think push themselves harder is perhaps the wrong phrase, but an adult onset swimmer kind of only has one pace anyway. They just go out and we say, look, swim easy, swim relaxed. If you can swim bilaterally, that's a great measure of the intensity of your swim. So If you feel like you need to breathe more often than breathing bilaterally, you're probably going too fast for an Ironman. I think you can get away with it at a half Ironman, but bilateral capped swimming is a real good way to go. But I'd expect your half Ironman swim plus a few minutes is probably the ballpark where you'll get to.
Brilliant.
Is that okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
I think the thing to remind yourself of as well is that the swim is really just a wet warm-up for a very long bike ride warm-up to do the London Marathon. And if you see you swim one of my things that I say is that if you imagine that you're going to swim the Bristol Channel and then ride from Bristol to London and then do the London Marathon, that puts in context the scale of the challenge that you're gonna take on. Then it becomes less about how hard can I swim and more about how easy should I swim. If you see the difference, the more you can sort of save your energy reserves and be relaxed for later, the better. The last thing you want to do is feed yourself too high up, have to swim really hard to get off the line, be really blown up and out of breath, and then, you know, that's a bad way to start what could be a 10, 12 to 16, 17 hour day.
The other thing to bear in mind with swimming is you're probably not going to be looking at your watch while you're swimming, so you're probably not actually going to be seeing the pace that you're going at. So, and actually we see with a lot of athletes the bigger gains to be had in terms of the swim performance on the day are actually to do with the tactical elements of open water swimming. So sighting well, seeding yourself well, finding some feet to sit on. And if you've got something fairly rudimentary, like Rob mentioned, i.e., you know, can you breathe bilaterally as a measure of your effort, then actually the bigger challenge becomes swim as close to 3.8k as you can. And, you know, don't get out of the water and look at your watch and you've swum 4.5k because you've not sighted well, because then, you know, pace is kind of irrelevant. So there's, especially for someone at the level of swimmer that you are, Mohammed, there's probably a lot to be said for and a lot to be gained by thinking a little bit more about, I guess, race strategy and execution in the swim and the skills associated with that than the actual pace that you're swimming at. Yeah,
I think that's good advice. I think it's less about thinking about the clock and more about thinking about the effort, and more about, you know, the shortest swim distance you can legally swim around the buoys is going to lead you to your best swim. That's definitely the way to think about it. Is that okay? I think we might have lost your connection there. I hope that's answered your question anyway.
Oh, yeah, all good. Yeah, perfect.
All good, brilliant.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Mohammed, and we wish you the best of luck. I hope it goes really well for you on race day.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good stuff. So James Hull has got a good idea. Let's see if we can get you on and have a chat there, James. Are you available for speaking for us regarding?
Hopefully, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. How you doing?
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I was wondering about, you know, you can get the medical ice packs that you break the sachet inside them and you get an instant cold. And I wondered about putting those in a couple of those in the special needs on the run. I get really hot on runs, you know, it's like 15 degrees. That's like, you know, outside my my operating temperature. And I run, you know, ultras and marathons, and I just shut down. So it's all about heat management for me. So I'm praying for, you know, a nice cloudy Lancashire day, really. So yeah, so I just wanted, you know, if I put a couple of those in, I could pick it up, or, you know, just to be really exit the park, I guess, and cool down a bit, and then I guess it's a quick way I can get rid of it. I suppose I can get rid of it at the next aid station without littering. I don't know. Has people done that before?
I think that's a great idea. Another thing you can think about is try and stay cool on the bike early doors. So an extra bottle of water from the aid station, get it all over down the back of your helmet and on your back, and keep your top quite wet. And then on the run, there's evidence coming out now that bizarrely, like the palms of our hands are one of the best places to cool the body from. Whereas if you think of it, it's a bit like having a thermostat in a different room. And the thermostat's up there saying, hey, it's 20 degrees up here, but in my kitchen, it's freezing cold. The thermostat thing happens in the body in a similar way. If you make the skin of the chest cold as you're running on a hot day, your body gets a signal that things are okay and it starts to shut off the cooling mechanism,
Right.
except for in your forehead, your cheeks, and the palms of your hands. So if you had those ice packs in the palms of your hands, I mean, I'd try this before race day, but that might well provide you with some cooling that would really help you.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout. I was at Chumley Castle on Sunday, and that was a hot day. And as you said, I hit the second water station and on the bike and actively tried to cool myself down, ready for the run, which was really horribly hot. So yeah, thanks. That's really good. While I'm still on, thank you so much for these. Thanks for all the video content. It's been unbelievable. It's so helpful. You know, for the last 6 months, the first one you ran. You know, just thank you to you and Chris and the guys. Brilliant. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. I'm glad it's helped. And success for us is going to be seeing you all smash it on race day and cross the finish line. So send us a note after you finish and let us know how you get on. It'd be great to hear your success stories. We'll read them out on the podcast. Awesome stuff. Best of luck to you then, James. Right, Heather and Inez, let's have a chat with you guys. Heather, you jumped in here, and I'm sure you are not alone with the thing that you've written here, with worries regarding not making the bike cut off. And how do you manage that? How do you balance it against, do I try and build up some time early doors, so if I have a bad run, or should I go as easy as I can on the bike? So are you there, Hannah? Do you want to come on and have a quick chat with us?
Yeah, well, I'm here.
Hiya, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Excited and nervous, it sounds like, right?
Yes, yeah. And I think one of my kind of, what I know is that I'm quite a slow swimmer. So I can do the distance and I can do it in under 2 hours, but we're talking about 1 hour 50-ish.
Okay.
So by the time I'm setting off on the bike, I'm going to be close to, the kind of the swim cut-off time, although I'm confident that I should be within it. But then that means that, I've kind of got no buffer zone at all for going on the bike. And as you're saying, I don't know whether I'm better off, because you were saying earlier to try and take it easy for the first half. But so if I try and do that, but then still have to make the cutoff times.
Yeah, I think the caveat is you have to go as easy as you can and still make the cutoff. That's the challenging line here. And specifically, it's on the really steep bits of the hills where what we don't want to see is people going really, really hard up the hills and then blowing themselves to pieces. Let's go back a little bit here. You're going to get out of the water in 1 hour 50. The swim cutoff is 2 hours 20. So there's 30 minutes there. So that's a good chunk of time. I want you to spend some time this week thinking, how can you possibly get from the water onto your bike in the shortest possible time? How can you save what might be the 5 minutes maybe, or the 10 minutes that you save could be the 10 minutes that get you through one of the intermediate cutoffs, or even the final cutoff itself. And last year I was in transition 1 and I watched people coming in and sitting down and getting things out of the bags and unpacking the holiday bags and changing clothes. And that's totally fine as a thing to do, unless you're worried about beating the cutoff. You need to be the slickest transition that's ever been seen in Bolton and be out on the bike as quick as you can and make the most of that 30-minute buffer that you've got. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So have it all ready, have a plan, write it down, think about the things you need in the bag, think about whether are you planning to put extra clothes on, or is it just going to be wetsuit off, helmet on, and out you go?
I wish I could do that, but I want to take some energy bars, and to do that I'm going to have to put like a cycle top on to have the pockets to put the bars into. So I think I'm going to have to put on a cycle top.
Okay. And how long is that going to take you?
Oh, I don't know. Hopefully not long.
My challenge to you is to get that down to 30 seconds or as close to as you possibly can, right? Something else you could think of here is, if you I know this because I just bought one the other day for training camp we went on. If you go to Wiggle, they make like a little top tube bag, and they're about £8 and they're amazing. You can get tons of stuff in them. Really simple. It's like a Velcro strap that goes around the handlebars and around the top tube, and it sits there and it'll easily take 4 energy bars. That might be something that you could get yourself.
Yeah.
And then you don't need a cycle jersey on. But honestly, I've seen these things be 50, 60 quid in the big brand name ones, the Wiggle own brand stuff. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I just think it's really good when stuff is great quality and cheap. It's really good for the £8 or £9 that you'll spend on it. And it's a great place because it's right there as you look down at your stem, and it reminds you to get something out and eat every time you look at it. Whereas maybe if it's in the back pocket, maybe without Andy's alarm that he talks about, maybe you don't think about it quite so much.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, because then that also means I'm not wearing an extra layer if it is going to be hot.
Yeah, very much so. I think you want fewer layers as possible on there. Yeah, there's also things that they make. It might be worth you having a nosy around on various websites at this, but I've seen things that go between people's tri bars as well, little net bags that go between the tri bars, so it's right there between, in the gap between your arms, it's right there for you. So there are other options other than having extra clothing on. And I definitely observed people who were putting more clothes on last year were burning time in transition, that if you're chasing the cutoff, you want as many of those minutes as you possibly can in the bank, as it were.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes
Thank
sense.
you. Yes, thank you.
Well, I wish you all the best. I hope that it goes smoothly for you, and I look forward to hearing about you having completed it, Heather.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Right, Martina says, I always pour water on my hands and wrists as this works for me to cool down, and it's also good for washing off sticky gels. Yeah, that's really good. And this point earlier, if you can avoid getting Coke or gel on your hands on the run, it's easier said than done sometimes, but my God, it's irritating if you've got sticky hands when you're running. It's the kind of thing that it's almost like an earworm that gets stuck in your head. If you can avoid that, or I saw in the layout of transition, the layout of the aid stations today, now in my UK brochure, the water is the first and the last thing at both the run and the bike aid stations. So you could always get what you need and then wash it off your hands with some water at the end there as well. Michael Busky says, suitable goggles with a rising sun direction. So, Michael, this is a great question. The year I was there, absolutely booted down, and I couldn't tell you where the sun was. The sun direction last year was right behind the start gate, so it's in your eyes as you're trying to sight the exit on your return leg. So, my advice in goggles in general for race day is, if you can afford to, and you've got the chance to try them both before race day, take with you both a set of clear lenses and a set of whatever you want to call them, not mirrored or sunglasses type shielded lenses. Then you've got the choice to make on race day morning. It's not unusual for the weather forecast to completely change between the day you go to bed and the day you wake up on race day. So having those two options with you is really, really good. And then you'll have the chance to see. It'd be well worth looking at the layout of the lake on Google Maps and working out in your head, where does the sun rise? Where's that going to be relative to the swimming? If you can breathe bilaterally, you're laughing because you can breathe on either side and you can turn to look away from the sun. But if, as Michael said, the sun's rising exactly where you're swimming for, it's going to make sighting hard in one direction because you can't exactly see the gate. But if you can see where it is relative to the sun, that does give you something to aim for, actually. So that might really help you.
Yeah, and going back to kind of what we were saying before about open water skills and particularly sighting, take the time on, definitely on Saturday, or if you don't get a chance for whatever reason on Sunday morning, to kind of have a walk around the lake, so you'll be able to see the way that you're swimming out. By the sounds of it, the sun won't be in your eyes on the way out, it'll be on your way back. So take a walk along the lake and just see what's on the shore. And I'm probably telling you what you already know, but in terms of picking something to sight off, pick the biggest thing you possibly can, because it's only when you're in the water that you realize that that thing that you thought was big, that you'd be able to spot no problem, is actually almost impossible to see. So You know, I'm talking like, what's the biggest tree on the shore, or a big building that's there, or something like that, so that if you have got the sun glaring in your eyes, there's something big enough that can kind of cut through that you can focus on, and actually you don't need to worry as much about not being able to see everything else around you. You've got the confidence that you're swimming in the right direction in a straight line at least.
And it looks like the sun will be to your left as you're swimming out. It'll be over here. And then on the way back in, you're swimming virtually directly into the sun. So if you do get a sunny day, that's going to be the thing that's a bit of a challenge there. So take the time on the day before the race. If you get the chance, I believe there is I wrote this down before, Saturday at 10 o'clock, there's a practice swim, 10 till 11. So that might be something to aim for, that you can get down, get into the water, see what is where, and swim out a little bit, and then swim back and practice the sighting and what's going to be where with the relative direction of the sun. Oh, there's a good tip here from Martina, actually. I noticed the other day there are 4 tall trees above the finish and a large green building to the side, but the hut does blend into the trees a bit. That's exactly the kind of thing you want to be looking for, something that's really, really tall that you can aim at. You've only got half a second as you glance up, but if you can sight on those 4 trees, that's brilliant. Right, Leanne says, let's get you on, Leanne, and have a little chat, and this will probably form a good place to wrap this up for tonight, actually. Let me find you here. Oh no, you seem to have disappeared. Maybe you've gone already. She says, any top tips? Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I couldn't find you on a little list of people to unmute. That's great. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Great, thank you. So your question is all about recovery, is it?
Yeah. So like you finish the race, you're back home or wherever you're going to go afterwards. What are the best things that you can do for recovery, like the night of? And I'm guessing it's best not to have too many celebratory drinks.
I am not going to put myself in a position of telling anyone who's finished an Ironman they shouldn't have a few celebratory drinks. That would be commercial suicide. No, but in all seriousness, things that you can do that's really going to help, really simple stuff. If you can have some kind of protein recovery type drink as soon as you can after the finish, if you feel up to having it, fantastic. That's the kind of thing that's really going to help your body start to get nourishment into it, because your muscles are going to be pretty damaged. If you can have something reasonable to eat within half an hour of finishing, that's really, really going to help as well. The reality is you can feel pretty special after an Ironman. You can feel like you don't want to eat or you don't want to drink, and that can be perfectly normal for a while. It's not unusual for the roof of your mouth to feel a bit funny. Do you remember when you were a kid and you ate too many sweets and the roof of your mouth felt funny? If you've had gels and bars and stuff all day, you can feel a little bit like that. So if you possibly can, get that good recovery nutrition in. That's number one. If you've got a pair of recovery tights, some people don't think that these work, but I swear by them, and athletes I've had have sworn by them. They can really make a difference if you leave them in the bag that you'll have for straight after the race. If you can get them on straight away and then whatever, pull a pair of normal shorts on over the top, they've drastically reduced the amount of soreness that some people have experienced after doing Ironmans. So I think they're a really, really good idea as well. And it's not unusual to find it really hard to sleep, hard to get to sleep. It's hard to stay asleep. You'll find yourself waking up in the night as well. So giving yourself the best chance by going to bed early is a good thing. But I mean, you've just done an Ironman, so maybe you want to stay up and see the last finishes over the line, right?
Yeah.
You got anything to add to that, Andy? Have you got any more tips on the recovery?
No, I'm just impressed that there's someone thinking about that already, like thinking about once the race is over.
Yeah, we'll see afterwards.
You're probably gonna need a good couple of days, I think, to do nothing, and then don't plan on running for the week after the event at all, and think about not the next day but the day after. A really easy 30-minute spin on the turbo can really help flesh the legs out. But if you're really, really sore, those really specific post-Ironman, like you've been squatting heavy weights for 3 days in the gym feeling, you're just best waiting it out until that's gone before you try and do any exercise, I think, Leanne.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you very much.
my personal experience was being really excited about the thought of pizza in the finish line at Bolton in the tent, and then getting there, having one bite and just going, nope. So there's a lot to be said for, I mean, yes, there are things you can do, to things you can have and not have to kind of help and accelerate your recovery, but you know, you've just finished an Ironman, so to a certain extent, anything goes. You know, if there's one time you can just throw the rule book out, it's after an Ironman. So yeah, be led by your body and mind.
Yeah.
There's a Greg's, isn't there? There's a Greg's just opposite the finish line, so I'm sure there'll be more than a few people going in. Famously, Ironman France, there's a McDonald's directly opposite the finish line, and they put on amazing food, and everybody walks right by it and goes, there's like hundreds of athletes in their race kit still lining up at the McDonald's to have stuff. So listen to what your body's calling out for, I guess. Yeah, good. I hope that helps, and I hope you have a fantastic race, and I hope that yeah, I hope you get the race you deserve.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all the YouTube videos as well. I've watched like every single one now, and they're just so helpful, so thank you very much.
Great, that's great to hear. I'm glad they've helped. That's awesome. All right, everybody, well, that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. We wish you all the best. You've all trained exceptionally hard for this. You've got 10 days of taper madness to get through, so don't be surprised when your brain starts doing funny things, but by next Wednesday, next Thursday, you will start to feel physically fantastic, and by race day, be absolutely ready to go. If you've got any last minute questions or queries, you can fire those over to help@oxygenaddict.com, and we'll do our best to help out. We'll follow up with an email to all of you that have registered for this or who are watching the replay, and that'll include the race planning document. And watch out for next week's podcast that's going to drop tomorrow, where we're going to be talking about how to have the best balance of calories, fluid, and electrolytes, and what to do when you're racing in the heat. So we'll hopefully see loads of you on Saturday morning for transition walkthroughs. Until then, have a safe last 10 days before your race, and we'll see you all soon.
Good luck,
Cheers,
everyone. Bye.